This morning's session is episode 4 in our masterclass series. Officially, it's called our plan maintenance add-on. I like to think of it as our automatic job creation add-on. That's a little bit more of a mouthful, but effectively, that's what our plan maintenance add-on does, and that is it automates job creation. I think the most important thing about plan maintenance is that it can come across sometimes for some of our customers and for any of our customers or anybody who uses planned maintenance in any software product. I think it can come across sometimes as quite confusing. And I think it can come across as, I suppose, bigger than what it really should be. So this morning's session is a sort of an overview of what our planned maintenance add-on does. And it's basically designed to try and sort of, I suppose, whet your appetite for what we can do with regards to our planned maintenance add-on. And again, as I mentioned before, it's about demystifying it in my mind. It's about trying to sort of convey this idea that planned maintenance is really actually not all that complex. It's just about, as I said before, it's about automating job creation. Because the awesome thing about planned maintenance is that you don't, with our planned maintenance add-on, you don't have to remember to create the job. The job gets automatically created for you as long as as long as you bring together all those pieces. The other thing I would also mention about all of our add-ons, not just our planned maintenance add-on, is that all of our add-ons are specifically designed to add value. What they need to do is that they need to be an additional helping hand in using the Loc8 software. So to that end, we don't see any sort of difference between a reactive job and a planned maintenance job. In our minds, there's no difference. A job is a job is a job. And for some of you who have spoken to me before, I'm sure you've heard me say that on many, many occasions. Now, I respect and I completely appreciate that in actual fact, there's a big difference between a reactive job and a planned maintenance job for you as our customer. But in our minds, from a software perspective, there's no difference. A job is a job is a job. And so that really goes to this idea in this heart that our planned maintenance add-on is all about automating that job creation piece. So let me go through a couple of housekeeping things that I always love to do at the beginning of our session, then I'll get cracking into the actual session itself. Getting in touch with us can really be done in, I suppose, 3 ways. And that is, firstly, our help.loc8.com site. So help.loc8.com at the top of the screen there. And here's a great example, if I can learn to spell. Here's a great example on how to actually find some online resources. Here's our maintenance schedules article that our team has gone through and extensively developed and added to. It's a step-by-step guide. I won't be referencing it on this presentation, but it is a guide that you can use to go ahead and go through the process of using our planned maintenance add-on. A second and equally as helpful resource is our Vimeo page. So vimeo.com/Loc8COM. And what we do is that all of these masterclass episodes that I have recorded over the last couple of months, we upload to our Vimeo page. So this recording will be part of that process. This recording will be included on this page, probably in a couple of days' time, once the editing and all that sort of great stuff has been done by our team. But I think the key thing here is that this is not a one-shot deal. You're not going to be able to have this session with me and then never see this information again. Far from it. As I said, we do recordings, and then what we do is that we upload them to our Vimeo page. And then our third resource, well, actually 3 or 4, our third resource is our in-app chat option. So if I go ahead and I click on my little avatar here, my little logo on the bottom left-hand corner, and I come up to the help option, what you get is you get our little chat window here. And if I click on send us a message, what you can do is you can reach out and have a chat with us and ask any questions that you may have about the Loc8 software. Kind of cool thing is that those messages, those chats don't disappear for, I think it's about a couple of years from my memory. So you can go back and you can re-reference them and re-reference those old conversations when you want to. And then last, but by no means least, is our email address. So it's the good old-fashioned email communication method, and that is service@loc8.com. So without further ado, let's get into the planned maintenance side of things. A couple of things that I like to mention with regards to planned maintenance. I suppose a list of things to be aware of and to really begin with from the perspective of, here are the things that we need to start with. These are the bare basics that we've got to have to be able to even have a conversation about planned maintenance. But I suppose maybe just before that, let's go ahead and let me just show you where that add-on is available. So if I go ahead and I click on the little add-ons and integrations button here on the left-hand side, and that's this little tab that we've got opening up here right now. I'll remove the list of integrations that we offer, and I'll mention and scroll down in our list of add-ons here down to the planned maintenance add-on, which is right there as well. And you can go ahead and get that activated on your Loc8 system. If you have any challenges in doing that, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We would be more than happy to get that enabled for you and explain the costings around that, depending upon what type of agreement or arrangement you have with us. So that's how to turn it on. That's how to enable the planned maintenance add-on. In that list, and in the vein of lists of things that are necessary to be able to even begin to have that discussion around planned maintenance, the first thing in that list is you need to have a list of sites or locations and assets in your Loc8 system. So without sites, in other words, without locations or without assets, what you're not going to be able to do is you're not going to be able to actually go through the process of using our planned maintenance add-on. Bit of a hand in a glove type thing, if hopefully that makes some sense to you all. And that is that because, as I mentioned before, there's no difference in our mind between reactive jobs and planned maintenance jobs. The beauty, what that then means is that we then have to have, a minimum of a location or a minimum of an asset to be able to actually go through the planned maintenance process. Again, it's all about automating job creation. And of course, for those of you who know our system very well, and if you don't know it very well, there's a great masterclass video that I ran a few months ago about job creation. You'll notice that there are some key things that creating a job requires, and that is things like a subject and a customer. But a location is one of those really important pieces. So this runs to this idea that you've got to have a list of locations or a list of assets first, before you can begin to even think about using our planned maintenance add-on. So that's number one. Number two is a list of tasks. So again, to this idea and this concept that reactive jobs and planned maintenance jobs, well, there's really no difference between the two of them from our perspective. Obviously, from yours, quite a bit different. But from our perspective, a job is a job is a job. And I'm sure you'll begin to be sick of hearing me say that. But to that idea, as we work through that job creation process, whether we do it manually or whether we do it automatically through our planned maintenance add-on, the next thing in that list of things that we need is that we need to go ahead and have some tasks. Tasks very, very quickly, and I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail about our task management, our task library area, I should say. Tasks are all about driving behavior. In other words, here's a list of things that I want my technician to be able to go ahead and complete. Here are the actual action points, the things or the tasks that I need my technician to actually complete when they are when they are managing that job. It's not mandatory tasks when it comes to job creation, but it is important and it is mandatory when it comes to schedule maintenance, because we assume and we run on the assumption that when you are creating jobs automatically, then there's a whole structure around what you want those jobs to do. And I'll show you in a second here an example of a schedule that I have created myself. So that's tasks in our task library area. And the way to get to that is the settings button and then the task library area. There's a little add item button here on the top right-hand corner. I'm not going to go into how you create tasks. I'm simply just going to sort of say that they are, I suppose, important item number 2 in the schedule maintenance process. So a bit of a quick recap. Don't forget, as I said, we need either some sites or some locations or assets and also tasks to be able to go through the schedule maintenance process. So to that end, with those 2 important pieces of the pie, and those are the 2 probably biggest things that we've got to actually have or create before we go into the maintenance schedule process. Sorry. Let me go ahead and let's go ahead and have a look at that schedule maintenance process. Let me just show you how to go ahead and actually create schedules, and really sort of let's sort of deep dive into what those what schedules look like and how they function, and all that great stuff. Bearing in mind and keeping in the back of your mind here that the key goal here is about job creation automation. So the idea here, as I said before, probably going to say this a bunch of times again, and that is that what we're doing here is that we're automating that creation process. So how do we get there? Settings button on the left-hand side, maintenance schedules at the bottom of the list there. And here's a list of a bunch of schedules that I have actually created on my Loc8 system. Schedule maintenance from a creation perspective is really a two-part process. And oddly, what I might do is I might start at the end and work my way backwards. So the end of the process is defining the locations or listing all the locations. The reason I start here is because as you'll see when we go through the wizard here, that you can put in a lot of bits and pieces around things like what the subject of the job will have and what the description of the job will have, what type of assets we're dealing with, and what type of tasks we're going to have in our jobs. And one of the questions that I get very, very early in the beginning of that piece is, well, how do I get the assets in? I mean, where do we get the locations in? So that's kind of sort of why I start almost at the end of the process and work my way backwards from there. So here's a list of locations that I have added in to my UPS 3 monthly schedule. How do I get there? So I'll just go back one step here. Actually, what we'll do is we'll open up the smoke alarm testing schedule as well. And I just simply clicked on that number 4 there. And so what I've got is I've got a list of locations here. We've got 3 sites here. So 3 locations or 3 sites. And we've also, just to sort of mix things up a little bit, we've also got a location here in the form of a floor. And the reason I mention that is because not only can you list from a location perspective, where your assets are, not only can you list the obvious things like an office or something like that, but I can also go ahead and I can also add in, from a location perspective, things like a room, a unit, as an example. So if I go ahead and I pop in that particular room there, then what that means for me is that means that I can go ahead and I can actually choose a floor or a building or a room instead of an overall actual location to pop into my schedule. Now, what's the benefit? Why should I really care? We've got a number of customers here who have very large locations. And in those locations, they might have 2 or 3 or 4 floors or rooms or buildings, or I'm sure you get the gist of sort of where I'm going here. And in each of those buildings and rooms and floors, they may have a whole bunch of assets that need to be maintained. A really great example is things like smoke alarms. Realistically, I might have, 30 or 40 smoke alarms in a building. And the reality is that means that it's going to take me more than maybe a few days or maybe even a month to be able to go ahead and go around and physically test every single smoke alarm. So should I create a job that has every single smoke alarm on it, the 100, the 50, the couple of hundred, and just give my technician, a couple of months to get it done? Or should I, in actual fact, should I maybe go ahead and create multiple jobs and simply allocate each of the smoke alarms on a job by job basis? So maybe a job here for the month of, November, where 25 smoke alarms are, and then the month of December for another 25, and then the month of January for another 25, and so on and so forth. And I can do that by, instead of popping in a location as being just the overall site or the overall location, I can drill down into the actual physical floor. I can actually drill down and put in a location as a floor or a building or a room. And what that does is that instead of looking at the high level, in other words, looking at the actual overall site and scooping up all the smoke alarms in that particular location, what it does is it actually looks at just that room or just that floor or just that building. And so that is an amazing grouping function. In other words, it'll basically sort of, narrow down that funnel to just the smoke alarms in just that floor or just that building. And it's just those assets that will be actually added to the actual job that it's going to create here as well. So schedule maintenance, as I mentioned, is a two-step process. It's all about putting all the bits and pieces together around things like that run the subject, the description, the tasks, and what type of assets we're going to add in. And that's stage one or step one. And then step two is about physically adding in the actual locations to the actual job, to the actual schedule itself. So that's what I've done. As I mentioned, I was going to start at the end of the process and work my way backwards. So I've gone ahead and I've put in all my locations. So let's just jump back now and have a look at this particular schedule in the context of that step one process. So when I go ahead and I click on that view button there on the right-hand side, what I've now got is that step one of those two steps when it comes to the creation process. So let me go through each of these sections in a sort of a section by section basis and explain exactly what they all do, so that you get a sort of a better gist of what, again, our planned maintenance add-on provides to you from a benefits perspective. Again, something that I've mentioned on a bunch of occasions that I really sort of want to hammer home here, and that is planned maintenance or our planned maintenance add-on is about automating that job creation process. So to that end, if you think about it from the perspective of what are the things that I would need to be able to just get a piece of software like Loc8 to just automatically create jobs, what information would I need to give the software to be able to just create jobs by itself, as opposed to me engaging in that process or interacting in that process and doing that creation process myself? What would the things be that I would need? And, I would need something like a subject, as an example. I would need to know who the customer was. I would need to know potentially what the description of that job is going to be, what the tasks are. So that's what we're going to do now. So step one in the in this section here is a name, a code, and a description. Now, to be very clear, this name, code, and description area is all about managing the schedule. None of the information that we have in this section here is going to flow through to any of the jobs that we are creating at this point. So this is all about just managing schedules, managing the schedule in the context of all the other schedules that I had there in my overall list. Section two is about what we refer to as schedule frequencies. And this is one of these amazing features that we have in the software that gives you the ability to not only, again, automate that job creation process, but also gives you the ability to be able to have multiple, what we refer to as multiple frequencies. So what's a schedule frequency? Schedule frequencies define the time component in the creation process. So let me state that again. Schedule frequencies define the time component in the creation process. In other words, how often do I want in the process of automating my job creation, how often do I want those jobs to be created? Do I want those jobs to be created every month, every 6 months, maybe every 12 months? How often do I want the software to automatically create those jobs? And the really nice thing here is that I can put in not only one, but multiple frequencies. What's a good scenario? Well, here is a great scenario. Here's a great example of why I would need multiple frequencies. Smoke alarms require, in some countries, multiple checks throughout the year. Then in addition, those checks can sometimes be different at each part. So sometimes the monthly check or the quarterly check and the tasks, so to cast your mind back to those two things that I needed to be able to even begin the process of schedule maintenance, those tasks could be different at the 6 monthly mark or the 3 monthly mark or the 12 monthly mark, as opposed to the other ones. So I might have a task that is specific to the 3 monthly check, but I might have that task and an additional task, in other words, an additional step that I need to complete from a task management perspective at the 6 monthly mark, and then maybe the first two and a third one at the 12 monthly mark, at the 12-month mark. Sorry. And so that's that idea and that concept that there are actions that need to be completed every quarter. There are actions that need to be completed every 6 months, and there are some individual actions that need to be completed every 12 months. And the way that you can go ahead, instead of having to create, multiple schedules for each occurrence, is that you can create what we refer to as schedule frequencies. In other words, multiple frequencies, as I've done here, 2 in total, and I can throw in each of those pieces in the process. So here's where we now delve in to what's going to be actually included in the actual job that it's going to go ahead and create. So smoke alarm testing in this section here is the subject of the job. SAT 001 is the code of the job. And this little smoke alarm testing line here is the description of the job. So we've got a subject, we've got a description, and we've got a code. And unlike this section at the very top here, where this is all about, this name code description area is all about managing this schedule in the context of the list of schedules that I have, now we're delving into the actual information, the actual stuff that's going to go into our schedule creation. And actually, sorry, my apologies, I should say, into the jobs that are going to be created as a result of this particular schedule. I've also said I'm going to create a job per location. So don't forget, we had a look at that list of locations before. After the location date, every month. So every month, the Loc8 software is going to go through that list of locations, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to attempt to create jobs for each one of those locations. And I think we had 4 or 5 of there. So that would mean that potentially we might have as many as 4 or 5 different jobs based on those lists of locations that you had there. With these 3 tasks, so here are the 3 tasks. Of course, keep in mind that as I said at the very beginning of this masterclass, we needed to have 2 key things to be able to even start the process. And the first one was a list of locations or a list of assets and a list of tasks. And here's the reason why, is we have to have those tasks first before we can actually begin to even look at this schedule maintenance process for asset of these types. And there's that site asset type, and there's the smoke alarm as well. And then the second frequency that I've created is create a job per location after the location date every 6 months this time. Got a couple of tasks there and a couple of asset types there as well. But again, the key thing here in this section of the process is job subject, job description, job code. So we're specifically putting information in there that will then be included in the jobs that this schedule creates. And then last but by no means least, we have the really awesome feature of what I like to refer to as a window of opportunity for these jobs. Basically, this section here at the bottom defines how much advanced warning your technicians will have with regards to these jobs, and how much time they will have to complete the job. So we've said in section 2 that section 2 is going to define both the subject, the description, the code, and how often the jobs will be created. And the section 3 of this step 1 basically says that if I go ahead and I want to give my technicians, say, a week to get ready, what I am doing here is that number 7 there basically means that I want these jobs to be created 7 days before the scheduled date. So 7 days before the actual day that the job needs to be started, these jobs will be created. And that gives our technicians about 7 days, about a week to get ready, to actually get into the mindset or the mental space to go ahead and get these jobs completed. And then they are due 7 days after. Now, as I said, I like to refer to this, or I like to see this as the window of opportunity. Just my terminology. But effectively, the window of opportunity says I have 7 days to get ready and 7 days to get the job done. And of course, you can increase those. I've seen customers who give their technicians 7 days to get ready and 30 days to actually get the job done as well. Almost there, almost done. The job type section basically gives me the ability to define what job type is going to be used when the job is created. This is a great example of that idea that I have mentioned on a bunch of occasions over this session, and that is that Schedule maintenance is all about automating job creation. So I could create these jobs manually. I could actually do that. I could create these jobs manually myself. But the schedule maintenance add-on means that I don't have to remember to do that. And so because I could create these jobs manually, well, what's step number one in that job creation process? Well, step number one is going ahead and actually defining what type of job I am doing. And this is really a fantastic way for some of our customers to corral all that work, and to, when you're looking at a list of hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of jobs, to be able to pluck those ones out that you know are specifically around a particular scenario, like preventative maintenance, like, and I'm sure you can get the gist of what I'm sort of trying to say here from a job type perspective. A couple of additional options there around things like allowing for weekends and holidays, and merging jobs and whatnot. And that's basically step one in the schedule maintenance process. I said that I would start at the end and work my way backwards. And I'll jump to the end one more time just to sort of wrap things up here. If I delve all the way back to the end there, and I have a look at my list of locations, this is step two, or section two of that creation process. Because what we've done with section one is that we've gone through and we've actually given the system, or given the software, all the information that it would need to be able to go ahead and reasonably create a job. In other words, what's the subject of the job? What's the description of the job? What are the tasks that need to be actually added into the job? Again, when I go ahead and I actually create that job automatically for you, the end customer. And so the last and probably the most important part of the entire process is a list of locations. So I got a total of 5 locations here. A couple of sites there, just designated by that little site symbol or Google pin symbol. And then we've got a unit 1 and a floor 1 as well. And don't forget, as I mentioned, the ability to be able to put in your locations not only physical sites or physical offices, but also buildings, rooms, and floors, means that you can better funnel down, you can better corral your assets. And so that means that if you have a lot of something in a particular, a hell of a lot of smoke alarms in a particular building, I could put in each of those floors, floor 1, floor 2, floor 3 as an example, and that would then mean that I could go ahead and I could actually then sort of group them and get some separate jobs to be created on a location by location basis. Last but by no means least, in this last stage of that creation process, and I didn't show it to you at the very beginning because I wanted to do that, in this step here, and that is that I need to go ahead and I need to choose an activation date, or basically define when this particular location, in this case, Unit 1 for the customer of Apple Corp, will actually become active. Now, what do activation dates mean? Activation dates basically are the moment in time plus, so moment in time plus the 6 months, the 3 months, all that date stuff that I put in at the schedule frequency piece. So cast your mind back, and you can obviously, once this video has been uploaded to our Vimeo page, you can rewind back to that part of the video. But you'll notice, and you'll remember hopefully, that when we went through that, when we had a look at that schedule, you notice that I had 2 schedule frequencies there. One was for every month, and one was for 6 months. And this activation date becomes really, really quite critical, because if I choose today as my activation date and click on apply, what will happen is that the schedule will then generate jobs where the location is Unit 1, and it will generate jobs every month and every 6 months as well from the 18th of November. So this is a lot of information, and I get all that. And sometimes I like to fall back to, a bit of good old fashioned pen and paper to sort of just try and get clear in my mind about when, jobs are going to be generated as well. So that location is now activated. That Unit 1 is now activated. And if I go ahead and I choose, let's go ahead and open up one of these locations here. If I go ahead and I throw that open, what you'll then notice is that there's a couple of additional options with regards to each individual location that I can do. So these are some sort of extra add-ons, every pun intended, that we can complete on a location by location basis. I can, on a per location basis, I can define who the assignee is. In other words, who the technician is going to be for this job, for this location. Or additionally, I can also change the priority for this particular location. So maybe one location is a higher priority than another location. For those of you who have gone over our job masterclass, I can also change the charge template if I want to, and a couple of additional other features that we also have there as well. And then you'll notice that the two schedules that we had there every month, every 6 months, it shows the activation date. And I can even click on this little asset number here and actually have a look at some of the assets that are going to be included in that particular in the creation process of that particular schedule. So that's the schedule maintenance process. And again, let me just sort of do a bit of a quick wrap up here. And if anybody's got any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them at this point to sort of add to the whole discussion as well. But a bit of a quick wrap up to sort of I suppose focus on a couple of key concepts. First things first, as I mentioned at the beginning of our session here, I've got to have a list of locations or sites and assets. I also have to have a list of tasks created in my task library. And those two components are absolutely critical when it comes to the maintenance schedule process. With those two things, I can then go ahead and create a schedule. It's no more difficult than the settings button on the left-hand side, and then the maintenance schedules option in the list. And I should say it's as easy as clicking on the add schedule button there on the right-hand side. And this is very much of a fill in the blanks exercise. Additionally, the name, the code, and the description in this top section is there to help you to just manage this schedule in the context of the other schedules that we have here. So those three fields are about managing the schedule in the context of the other schedules that you have. Secondly, in that process, we can go ahead and we can define the frequency. In other words, the name, code, or the subject, I should say, the code and the description of the job that this schedule is going to go ahead and create. And then most importantly, what we will do is that we will define how often this particular schedule will go ahead and actually create a job. So every 7 days, as an example, or every 1 month, as an example. Hopefully that sort of makes some sense there as well. And then almost there at the end, I need to throw in those tasks that I created before. And I also need to critically throw in the types of assets that I want to have covered in this whole creation process. And then you need to simply just click on that save button there on the bottom right-hand corner. And then last but by no means least, in that section one of that 2-section process, a window of opportunity for our technicians to go ahead and actually be able to get that work completed. So I've said here on this occasion that they have the ability to get ready. In other words, to basically get prepared for this job. There's a 7-day window there, and then I've given them the ability to be able to go ahead and get that work done over the next 30 days as well. So that is the whole schedule creation process. As I mentioned before at the beginning of our session here, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to help in any way, shape, or form. There's our help.loc8.com site. There's our Vimeo page, which is where we upload all these videos to our Vimeo page. Obviously, there's our chat option underneath the help button there on the bottom left-hand corner. And then last but by no means least is our email address at service@loc8.com. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining me this morning. I really am terribly grateful for you spending the time in your day to get in touch to sort of engage in this process and obviously to watch one of these masterclass series. As I said, what I'll be doing is I'll be uploading this to our Vimeo page, as I mentioned before, so you can go ahead and actually have a look at that and play and replay those videos whenever you want to. But that is the beauty of schedule maintenance. It is one of a number of add-ons that we offer. And I suppose as a sort of a beautiful last wrap-up statement, bear in mind that what it does is that it automates that job creation process. So you can create those jobs manually, but the challenge, of course, and we know this about all of our customers because our customers get in touch with us and they let us know about this fact, and that is that remembering to create that job can sometimes be the biggest challenge when you've got such a massive volume of assets or a massive volume of locations. So that schedule maintenance add-on takes that whole remembering bit out of your hands and it does it for you. So it automates that process for you. And that's really the benefit of adding that add-on to your overall Loc8 system, is automating that job creation process. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time this morning. And when you have questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We would be more than happy to help in any way we can. So have a great day, and I'm sure we'll speak soon. Take care. Bye bye.